Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Residence Council Foundations. My name is Stephanie Ventura and I'm the Education and Community Engagement Manager at the Ontario Association of Residence Councils. I'm joined by resident leaders Devora Greenspan and Stephen Wenzowski. Both Devora and Stephen are members of OARC's Resident Expert Advisors and Leaders Group, as well as being leaders of their individual long-term care home residence councils. Melissa Matheson, OARC's Home Support and Education Facilitator, is providing technical support for today's webinar. Thank you all for being here. We'll jump right in.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ontario Association of Residence Councils. So today on our time together, we'll go through an introduction about why we're doing this webinar. We'll talk about the legislation and how it relates to the Residence Council, the powers of the Residence Council, the 3 pillars, and what a Residence Council meeting looks like. So what we've heard from you, this is why we're doing this webinar. We have heard from residents all across the province and from resident council assistants that long-term care homes are in a state of transition. COVID-19 related restrictions are still impacting day-to-day life, including the operation of residence councils and holding resident council meetings. New long-term care legislation has been challenging to understand and to implement. There's a lot of unanswered questions. Human resources challenges are present in homes. There's a lot of team member turnover, and this has hindered or even halted resident council progress. Resident councils are looking to reset and restart. On the next slide, we'll jump right into legislation and the Residence Council. So many know that the new legislation, the Fixing Long-Term Care Act, came out in April of this year. This replaces the Long-Term Care Homes Act of 2010. It expands on the roles and responsibilities of the Residence Council. There are new provisions around staffing and care. So you might have heard about the 4 hours of care. It provides enhanced enforcement through the inspections program. So homes now there are fines associated with some of the inspections. And in addition to the existing Resident Bill of Rights, there are now 2 new rights added to the Bill of Rights. So the Fixing Long-Term Care Act outlines the framework for Residence Council and specifies how the home's management is to communicate with the council and what the council's scope of influence is. Homes are directed to work in collaboration with, consult, and seek the advice of residence councils, and councils are directed to advise the home, provide recommendations to the home, including through participation on committees, and to review documents of the home, such as the emergency plan, the quality improvement plan, inspection reports, and financial reports. On the next slide, we talk a little bit more about the Resident Bill of Rights. So the Resident Bill of Rights is embedded in the Fixing Long-Term Care Homes Act. There are currently 29 resident rights, which must be fully respected and promoted by the long-term care home. Of interest to residence councils is the last section, in particular, the 28th right, which says that every resident has the right to participate in residence council. So all residents are members of the residence council, and all residents have the right to attend residence council meetings. We have heard from you and understand that there are many reasons why all residents do not participate in council meetings. Working together, we continue to look for opportunities to increase participation by challenging ourselves to look beyond the monthly residence council meeting and to bring the residence council to the residents. More information on the Residence Bill of Rights is available on OARC's website, and this includes translations into various languages, as well as access to OARC's signature program for enhancing resident right Resident Bill of Rights education, the Through Our Eyes program. On this slide, this is a direction and an invitation to visit the OARC website, where you will find many helpful tools and resources that will help councils understand the legislation a bit better. And these tools are available to download and include fact sheets, resource guides, templates, and webinars. We have a very popular resource tool called the Understanding Our Law, and it includes excerpts from the Fixing Long-Term Care Act, which address specific clauses that outline the expanded rights, roles, and responsibilities of members of the Residents' Council. OARC also provides brief explanations in blue that help you understand critical aspects of the law. On the next slide, we talk about the powers of the Residents' Council. So in the Fixing Long-Term Care Act, and one of the very first steps to establishing a resident council is for residents to know what their rights and what their powers are, what the powers of the Resident Council are. The Fixing Long-Term Care Act, just like the Long-Term Care Homes Act before it, assigns 10 powers to every Residents' Council, which include but aren't limited to sponsoring and planning events and activities for the home, collaborating with community groups, providing advice and recommendations to the licensee, the long-term care home, and reviewing inspection reports, financial statements, emergency preparedness, and quality improvement plans. So these are just some of the powers of the Residents' Council. Other powers include reporting to the director any concerns that the council believes should be brought to the director's attention, and exercising other powers that aren't in the act but are included in the legislation, such as reviewing the home's communication plan, menu planning, dining and snack program review, and consulting on recreation and social activities. On the next slide, we continue with the powers of the Residents' Council. So in the Fixing Long-Term Care Act, it requires that homes assist their councils in exercising their powers without any restrictions or interference. Residents need to understand the powers that they have and in order to act on them, and they must be supported to act on their powers without interference. Again, OARC's Understanding Our Law, Fixing Long-Term Care Act, is available on the website and highlights the laws and regulations concerning residents' councils. With these powers, residents' councils can influence their homes greatly. On the next slide, we see that the powers awarded to residents' councils provide them with a very broad scope of influence. The resident experts, advisors, and leaders that are here with us today are going to share some ways that they have used their powers to influence their homes. Welcome to Devorah and Stephen. Thank you, Devorah and Stephen, for being here today to share your experience with our viewers. There is a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. And I've had the pleasure of hearing about some of the great things you've done in your homes through Residents' Council. If we could start with Devorah. Devorah, could you share with us how your council has used the powers awarded through the legislation to influence your home?
I'll start with my previous administrator, who was extremely pro-resident and very open to the needs of council. I brought to his, I'm in a one-floor home. And we have doors leading to courtyards where the residents can go out in the fall, summer, and spring to enjoy the greens and the garden. We have trees and we have umbrellas and tables and chairs out there. And it was always a big hassle for the residents to go out there. They always had to get a PSW or a staff member to open the doors and hold the door open. So through council, we had a meeting and I suggested we ask the administration to provide us with electric doors.
Mhm.
And I brought forth our concern, and within the appropriate time, we had automatic doors, and we now can go in and out of the courtyards without asking for help, which is a really big pro for residents. Since then, with change of administration, it's been a little more difficult. And of course, with the COVID pandemic, we have not had meetings. We did try to have Zoom meetings within the units, but it didn't work. We just couldn't coordinate the 3 television sets to work at the same time. So we kind of gave up. We did start having meetings again. And I'm very pleased that the administration has started to invite me to the quality improvement meetings. Which we have a meeting and all the managers are there of all the departments, and they give reports, and then I'm asked to give a residence council report, which I do. So that is a bonus. And since being a leader on council, I was president, and we now have changed to the leadership model.
It sounds like you and at your home have an eye for these things and how to improve things for the residents. And it's great to hear that there's acknowledgement and that your suggestions are taken seriously to improve things for residents.
Yes, yes. It's really important. And I do invite the administrator to our meetings when we have an issue or when we need to get information. The administrator is supposed to come and give quarterly reports on what is going on in the home. So she's invited to do that. Also, one thing I found out about being a leader in my home, a leader of residence council, is that I am empowered to get the financial report, which I didn't know. So now, yearly, she is invited to come and give us a financial report, and we do have a discussion and ask questions. So that's a plus.
Yeah, thank you for bringing those things up, Devorah. Those points that you've mentioned come directly from the Act. So meeting with the Residence Council at a minimum quarterly is one of the roles of the administrator that we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. And the reviewing of the financial documents, that's another provision in the Act. So thank you for bringing those up. Let's hear from Stephen. Stephen, could you share how your council has used its powers to influence your home?
Yeah, good afternoon there, Stephanie. Yes, well, we've developed a few ideas on, let's say, the Bill of Rights. We've had an annual scavenger hunt. And back then when the rights were only 27, and we had 27 eggs in each home area, and the residents, along with team members, which is staff, to assist, would go out and try and find all these eggs. Now, I know the prize was probably the big motivator, but still they got to read the rights.
Thank you, Stephen, for sharing that about how you were able to teach residents and team members about the Bill of Rights through a fun activity. So you've touched on two powers of the Residents' Council there. One of them being that you're to let residents in the home know what their rights are, and another one about sponsoring events for the home and for the residents. Thank you for sharing that.
I was just going to add that Residents' Council can also decide on trips. In the home I live in, we used to go on monthly trips. And then I formed an eating out club. We'd go out to a restaurant once a month to eat. And through Residents' Council, we would decide where and when we would go. And Residents' Council also gave suggestions to the program manager as to what we would like in our programming. So that was a big part of what we accomplished through Residents' Council.
Thanks for sharing that, Deborah. It's great to see what residents' councils can achieve when they know what their powers are and exercise those powers.
Okay, it came up through the resident council that people were not happy with lack of condiments and lack of choice of juices on the snack cart. And it took several motions of concern to get that dealt with. And now we have, and I still count when they bring the juices around, how many juices are available. And I say, okay, you pass this time. The condiments, yes. Every once in a while, yeah, where's the mustard? We have to ask that. But the snack carts, we now have fruit available when the snack cart comes around. When I first came here, it was only available in the dining room. So now they have it, you know, they can have it in the dining room and the 3 times snack carts during the day.
Thank you so much, Deborah and Stephen, for sharing some of the ways that your residents' councils use the powers provided in the legislation to influence things at your homes. You gave us some great suggestions, and it's so nice to hear how your home works together with the administrator and with your residents' council assistant to make things happen at the home. This leads into our next slide here, which is about the 3 pillars of residents' councils. So OARC refers to the 3 pillars as the resident council assistant, the resident leaders, and the administrator. So each of these 3 pillars works together to make sure that things are running well with the council. And we see that while they may have different roles and different scopes of influence, each role is equally important in making sure that a successful residents' council is occurring. It's important for each of these 3 pillars to understand their role and how it contributes to the effectiveness of the council. Let's start with the resident leaders. When we refer to resident leaders, we're referring to residents from the leadership team of the Residents' Council. We do recognize that there are various leadership styles, including the traditional executive style with a president or chair, while other homes may have a shared leadership model with a home area representative from different areas of the home. So the role of the resident leaders is to ask questions. Ask questions of your home's administration. Ask questions of other residents. We know that for various reasons, not all residents attend the monthly meeting. And so asking questions, getting to know your peers, taking the residents' council meeting to the residents who don't attend is an important role for the resident leaders. In order to represent the collective voice of the residents living in your home, including those who don't participate in meetings or who may not be able to speak for themselves, it's important to ask questions and get to know those people. Another important role of the resident leaders is to exercise your full scope of influence. So knowing what the legislation says, knowing what your powers are, knowing what the resident rights are, and what the resident rights are beyond the Resident Bill of Rights. So we're talking about things like the right to have 2 showers a week, the guarantee of having 2 showers a week, about knowing what the menu is and what changes to the menu. These are all things that if residents know about their full scope of influence and their powers and their rights, then they can really get things moving in the resident council and make some positive changes for all residents. Making informed decisions. So again, asking questions if you need more information. Many times the home's leadership will present something to the residents council for review. And many residents have told us that they feel that these instances are sort of like checking a box, and that they didn't feel fully informed of what exactly they were agreeing to or not agreeing to, or they felt like they had to agree to what the home was presenting. And this could be, this could be something like approving a menu. So some residents have shared with us that they didn't know how much they could change because they heard that perhaps the menu was created at a corporate office and that they really weren't able to make many changes. So we know that knowing what the powers are, knowing what your rights are is an important first step to being able to exercise those rights and make positive changes for all. And I mentioned looking beyond the monthly meeting. So getting to know the peers, ask your neighbors what issues are important to them, what they're happy with in the home, what they would like to see improved. While not all residents are interested or able to attend the meetings, each person is an individual with their own likes and dislikes, with values and beliefs, and who is also experiencing life in a long-term care home. So we continue to work on ways to involve and get the opinion and the feedback from all residents who live in long-term care. The next pillar is the administrator. So the administrator has a very important role. They set the tone in the home. So how they interact with the council, how they talk about the council really sets the tone for the rest of the team members in the value that they place on the residents' council. So the administrator needs to understand the powers of the resident council and support the council in exercising them. So an important role of the administrator is to know the legislation and how it applies to residents' councils, and to encourage and support the residents in applying their powers and exercising them. The administrator needs to understand the role and duties of the resident council assistant. So we know that the administrator is responsible for appointing an assistant to the council, but the council needs to approve of the appointee. The person needs to be suitable to the council. So it isn't just something that could be tacked on to an existing job description. This person needs to work well with the council, share values with the council, and it's important that the administrator understands that and knows how much behind the scenes work goes into supporting a residence council, so that this individual in the home does have that protected time to work with council outside of the 1 hour a month meeting. The administrator also provides strong support and accountability by meeting with the council upon request and responding meaningfully to concerns within 10 days. So OARC looked into this 10 days because there were some questions about, is it 10 business days? Is it 10 calendar days? Is it 10 days from the meeting? It's 10 days from when the administrator receives the minutes or the concern response review. So if you look at or use the OARC minute template, on the very back, there's a section for the administrator to sign and date that they have received the minutes. And it would be, if you're using that template, it would be 10 days from that date. And the response, not all issues will be resolved within 10 days, but residents want to know that something is being done, that this is being looked at, and what exactly the plan is to fix or change or provide some kind of additional information that they need. The next very important role is the role of the Residence Council Assistant. So we mentioned the Resident Council Assistant is appointed by the administrator, but needs to be a good fit for the council. And there is an opportunity to review this role on an annual basis. So the council, in the legislation, it says the council needs to approve of this person every year. When in the role of the Resident Council Assistant, the assistant is not a representative of the home. They are neutral. So they're not there to tell you everything that's happening in the home. They're there to support your council in whatever it needs. The resident council assistant is also not a member of the council. They simply take direction from the council. We always have to remember that the council belongs to the residents. The resident council assistant acts as a facilitator, focusing on resident strengths, and provides opportunities for residents to take active roles in resident council. So we have heard from you that there aren't residents who are wanting to or able to or interested in participating in residence council. They might feel that it's not for them or they don't know what to do. It's the role of the resident council assistant to find those strengths and really by knowing the residents in the home and identify ways that those residents can contribute to residence council if they choose to. That could be something like keeping time. If someone is very organized and interested in doing that role, they could be the timekeeper, someone to read the resident rights during the meeting, someone to welcome everyone to the meeting and say goodbye to everyone, a resident who would be interested in reading a land acknowledgement or a sharing circle or a closing sentiment or thought or prayer that the council has agreed on. That there's a role for many different roles in the council, and the resident council assistants do a great job at being able to identify those and encourage them. We've heard also from many of you, from many residents who have said that their resident council assistant is the reason that they know what's going on in the home, that they know what information is coming out from OARC. The resident council assistant many times is the individual who prints OARC bulletins and newsletters and shares them with the residents in the home so they feel connected. We know many times resident council assistants are a member or a manager in the recreation department or social work. And so these are special people who know the residents in the home, and we can't thank them enough for everything they do to help support resident councils. We know that the last couple of years, and in some homes even beyond that, that sometimes there are challenges with bringing these three pillars together. And that could just be because there's been turnover in either of these pillars, or because homes, the three pillars haven't had an opportunity to really connect and get to know each other because they've been under different challenges or focusing on different things. So OARC has this wonderful program called the Togetherness Training or Togetherness Workshop, where we spend the day in a home or virtually with the three pillars, the resident leaders, the resident council assistant, and the administrator. And through a series of activities, get to know each other. The three pillars get to know each other and begin the work at building a trusting relationship and understanding each other's roles and limitations. and what's important to each of the 3 pillars, and hopefully leave the day with a better understanding of each other and each other's role, and with a common goal to work towards. If there are any residents or resident council assistants or administrators who are interested in doing this kind of training, please reach out to OARC through our website or by giving us a call, and we can help set something up with you. So now that we've heard about the 3 pillars, let's move on to the resident council meetings. So what are the resident council meetings? They are mandated by the Fixing Long-Term Care Act and by the Long-Term Care Homes Act before it. They're supported by the resident council assistant. They're unique and special. Meetings may look different from one council to the next, and it really depends on what the residents in the home want their council to look like. The resident council meetings are for residents only. Guests must be pre-approved by the council, and that includes home team members as well. They're a safe space for residents to voice concerns, to meet peers, and celebrate success. Resident council meetings are not a casual tea social or program on the monthly recreation calendar that can be subject to cancellation because of outbreak or human resources challenges. It's an important legislated required meeting of the home, and not just something that can be canceled. If there is an outbreak situation or different kinds of challenges, OARC has created a tool called Strategies for Long-Term Care During Homes Outbreaks, and that's available on our website, and it provides some tips and ideas for how to continue resident council meetings when the home is faced with different challenges. And that could be pivoting to a virtual platform or hosting smaller meetings in each home area if cohorting is something that's being implemented in your home. And then maybe it's even a phone call. Maybe it's a team member who goes door to door and collects concerns and shares information. What matters is not what the meeting looks like, but that it continues, that it goes on. Resident council meetings are not a complaints only session. So there is an opportunity to voice concerns or share what can be improved upon or some challenges that residents are facing. But it's also an opportunity to come up with solutions. We have heard from residents that they want to be involved in the solutions. They have ideas and ways to change things in the home that will benefit all residents. So it's not just for complaining, it's also for celebrating success and for coming up with solutions. The resident council meetings are not run by the resident council assistant. We've heard before, the resident council assistant is there to support and encourage, but they are not running the show, as we've heard some residents say. And resident council meetings are not a committee of the home. They're an independent advisory group that belongs to the residents. Every council is unique and can choose what meetings look like in their home. So some councils, we've heard, will do a town hall style meeting and then have smaller groups get together for the intimate, private one-to-one sharing. Others have home area representatives and get together for a monthly meeting. Some homes do bi-weekly meetings. Some meet outside, some do it over the phone, some through Zoom. It really depends on what the residents who are in the meetings, what they choose to do. We do have, OARC has tools and templates that assist residents' councils in their operations, but they're not meant to be prescriptive. Our intention is to share the legislation, to share ways to make sure that the residents are exercising their full scope of powers, but the parts that you choose to include in your meetings are entirely up to you. So Stephen and Deborah shared with us some ways that their resident councils use their powers to influence their home. Let's hear a little bit about what their meetings look like. So Stephen, why don't we start with you?
Our council meetings, which were Zoom before, are now held down in the auditorium amongst all the PPE stuff. And it's nice to put a face and have people there. And actually, we've had more people come out now, which is good. We meet once a week on a Tuesday, second Tuesday of every month. I shouldn't say every week, every month. The second Tuesday. And we have quite a turnout. I don't call myself the president, I just call myself the chair. We have a vice chair. We have the assistant to the resident council. The managers, either they're invited or they ask to be invited. So generally our meetings, we've probably got about 20 show up, which is a good number.
Well, that's very good, Stephen.
Yes, in terms of leadership style, I like to lead a little bit. I'll put something out and then I'll let the council, the fellow residents deal with it. So like the one instance was the money that we'd made from a bazaar. I suggested that we give some money to the family council because they're a great participant in helping. And I wasn't expecting the amount that the council said they should give to the family council. In fact, I was rather surprised, and it was very generous.
Yeah.
The agenda, that's done between myself and the assistant. I'll put forth ideas, she'll put forth ideas, and then she'll print out a sheet. And the sheets presented at council along with the last meeting, and then it's dealt with. The nice thing we just done recently is we don't read the minutes from the last council. We just ask everyone read it before. When it comes to the council meeting, just approve it that it's gone. And it's improved the atmosphere and the resident council. In fact, I've heard a lot of feedback. They like that the way it is. So instead of an hour and a half, it's like 45 minutes. We're gone. The minutes are taken by the assistant. And then once she types them out, I proofread them and then I sign them and the administrator signs them. So there's these two people know what's going on.
Are they posted, Stephen?
Yeah, they do, but it's a kind of in a hallway that's not in the direct traffic area. And they don't post on all floors. That's something for me to come up with, where we should have a book available at every nursing station for residents to read.
You've touched on a few important things, Stephen. So the role of the residence council assistant is really to support the residence council in what they need. And
That's right.
you know, not every council is the same. So in your council, the assistant types up the minutes, and then there's the approval process, which is, these things are all outlined in the legislation as well.
Yes.
And the posting of the information also, there are provisions in the act for how things should be posted, and being in a conspicuous area is one of them. So you're very well versed on the act and on the regulations, and so you're empowered to make these positive changes in your home because you have the act to back you up. So that knowledge really is power in this case.
Yeah, Stephanie, could I just add that the minute, if you not sure about how to handle the minutes, OARC has a terrific template, and I use it all the time, as well as the agenda template. They are two very great tools for councils to use. There is also a tool as to how to write for the minutes, but my assistant has found that she has to tweak the template a little bit to suit our meeting, because not all residence councils are the same.
Mhm.
So the taking of the minutes and how the minutes are presented are a little bit different.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the templates. One of the ones I think Deborah is referring to is a minutes template and an agenda template that have links directly to the legislation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then these are templates, as we've mentioned, and they're customizable. So whatever the needs of your council are, you can adjust the templates to meet
Yes.
those needs.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Steph,
And also, I just want to mention, I don't think Stephen mentioned that council meetings are just for residents. If a family member wants to come, they have to be invited, and they have to sit quietly and not interfere. I had a really bad experience with that. I had a family member come, and I couldn't very well throw her out. And she started to run the meeting, and I was really annoyed. So, oh, and that's another thing. Our staff assistants are there to support the residents and hopefully take minutes, but they are not supposed to run the meeting, which I have seen done in some homes.
Right, the resident council assistant, so they're appointed by the administrator.
Yes,
They have
no,
to be, they have to be suitable to the council. So the council has the ultimate decision and say in who the resident council assistant is. And it has to be a good fit. The person has to get along well with the residents. So
yeah, the staff member who is slated for staff assistance is brought forth, and it goes to council, and they have to approve yay or nay. And if they say nay, the administrator has to find someone who will be a fit.
right. And this
So
is something that's
the bottom line is that council has the final say as to who is going to be the staff assistant.
right. And there is an opportunity yearly to confirm that the council wants to keep the assistant.
Yeah.
And that everything is working out
Yes.
well. Yeah, and you also brought up about the members of residence council. So we've mentioned that all residents in the home are members of residence council, but
That's right.
team
Whether they
members,
go to meetings or not. Sorry, Stephanie.
no, that's okay, please.
Whether they go to meetings or not.
Team members are by invitation only, and as are any other guests.
Yeah.
I think Stephen wanted to add something.
yeah, I just wanted to say that for resident councils, you should at least in your meeting at the start or somewhere during the meeting, read the residents' rights, not all 29 of them, but let's say do 3 a meeting.
Yeah, you know what I do, Stephen? I put all the numbers in a box, and I have 1 or 2 residents choose one, and we decide. I give them Clio before. They all have copies of Clio. And for those people who don't know what Clio is, it's a booklet that has all the residents' rights in it, with the government, with the ministry's definition, and then in blue underneath the black ink is the resident is the layman's definition. And we discuss that, and that way we bring forth at every meeting 1 or 2 residents' rights.
Thank you for sharing the information about Clio. That booklet is being updated as we speak. And
Yes.
a version that includes the 29 rights will be available on the Clio website. Stephen, did you have another thing to add?
Well, I'd just like to say our assistant to our council, she's a manager here, and she's quite good, quite neutral. In fact, when I thought I may be pushing things, she's encouraged me to push.
So the resident council assistants, when they're working for the council, are neutral, as you say, and that's an important thing to remember. So they're not a representative at the home when they're in the meeting, and they're not a member of the residents council either. The take-home messages for today's webinar: each residents council is unique. What works for one will not necessarily work for another. Understanding the legislated scope and powers of residents councils is an important first step, and OARC is here to help. Residents councils belong to the residents. It is separate from the home, but supported by the home. Residents are experts by experience. We heard from Devorah and Stephen today, and we see that only residents know what life is like in long-term care, and their advice and consultation is necessary for good decision-making. A good relationship between the 3 pillars is vital for success. We can tell when we have a really great residents council that's working very well, that there is an excellent relationship between the administrator, the resident council assistant, and the resident leaders. Our last slide, we've reached the end of our time together today. Thank you to resident leaders Devorah and Stephen for sharing your insights and experiences. Special thanks to Melissa Matheson, Ontario Association of Residents Council's Home Support and Education Facilitator, for providing technical support during the webinar. I hope this brief introduction has been useful and invite you to visit the OARC website at www.ontarc.com to access the resources discussed in today's webinar and more, or to reach a member of the OARC team. Thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure,
you.
Stephanie.
Thank you.